It's All Things Considered on WNYC. I'm Sean Carlson.
If you have questions or need to report an issue.
It's Thursday. That means it is time for On the Way, our weekly segment on All Things Considered, breaking down the week's transit news. Joining us is WNYC's transportation reporters Stephen Nesson and Ramsey Khalife. And also joining us this week, a very special guest, WNYC's sanitation reporter, Liam Quigley.
Hello.
And that's where we're going to start this week. Liam, you are here because you broke a story about a looming fight over street space. The city plans to install trash containers in parking spaces across town to get piles of garbage off of the sidewalks, but officials now say it'll take, get this, 7 years to install all of them. What's the deal?
Yeah, it could take us into 2032
Wow.
to finish this trash revolution, which a lot of this comes down to parking. That's kind of what you get when you read between the lines of this new city document that's hinting at a bunch of potential challenges to the rollout of this trash revolution. It's something the city does to kind of cover its bases. What could happen when we really do swap parking spots for these empire bins that sit in the street instead of having huge piles of rotting trash bags everywhere?
Yep.
Sanitation officials are careful to say, look, no, God did not decree that these were parking spots. We just happen to use them for people to store their cars.
Right.
And there's a potentially better way to use this public space, which is storing residential waste. That would be roughly 4% of parking spots citywide.
And, something I was thinking about when he brought this up is, city bike docks are everywhere. How does that really, play into this and the strategy for the city? How did they do that?
Yeah.
It's a good example of we can change in a pretty big way how we use this curbside space. That's 10 years in the making. That's now just coming to Bay Ridge. So it's another example of this stuff takes a long time.
Yeah. Well, in any event, a really interesting dialogue about how we use public space in New York City, right? Moving on, Long Island Railroad riders breathed a sigh of relief this week. A looming strike was averted for now. But, Stephen, you report that the threat of a strike is very much alive, and that could happen next year, right?
Absolutely. So this week, the 5 Long Island Railroad unions that have been without a contract since 2022 voted to authorize a strike. It would have gone into effect today. But they did something else as well. They asked President Trump to create this emergency board to help broker a deal. Actually, they said it's the first time in the history of the union that they've had to do this. Wow. And it's basically a mechanism that pauses everything for several months so the sides can meet, present their cases with a mediator, see if they can find a solution. But, if they still can't agree on a contract, they could still go on strike next May.
Wow. And Sean, just a reminder, this is all because they are trying to get a new contract.
Right.
The unions want a 16% raise over 4 years, and the MTA just says that's way too much. And both sides seem pretty stuck on this. If you remember the New Jersey Transit strike and that union, that strike actually did happen in May, and they were similarly stuck on pay raises. How are we going to both agree on this? So what that agency never did was say that they might have to raise the fares because of this, and now this is what the MTA is suggesting if they want to meet the needs of these 5 unions. Yeah. But it looks like they have now some months to figure it all out. A deal that works for both sides.
Yeah.
Still, the MTA sort of continued this war of words with the public after the union made this announcement. The MTA's chief of policy, John McCarthy, said, quote, after months of radio silence, these outlier unions have finally admitted they weren't serious about negotiating. They never had a plan to resolve this at the bargaining table. Whoa. He says if they were serious about settling, they would have agreed to something, binding arbitration. He calling for the president to help intervene a, quote, a cynical delay. Wow. He says, but the union on the other hand says they're being the grown-ups in the room by asking for professional help. To me, it sounds like the classic Pee Wee Herman, I know you are, but what am I kind of arguments.
All right. We accept Pee Wee Herman references here on the way. We have a new bill making waves in the city council right now. It could be up for a vote in the coming weeks. It would limit how ride-hail apps, things like Uber and Lyft, right, can remove drivers from those platforms. Ramsey, tell us what that's about.
Right now, these apps, if they get any complaint, whether it's something as extreme as alleged sexual assault, or if you're looking at your phone too much, they can immediately deactivate you from their platform if you're a driver. What this bill does is maybe create a system that requires a 2-week notice before a driver gets fully deactivated, and also establishes, I guess, an arbitration process, which could include a panel of driver-side representatives, of company-side representatives. And the bill, at the same time, would still allow for Uber and Lyft to immediately remove somebody if they can find that they just cause for egregious misconduct. But Lyft believes that the language of the bill might be a bit too vague. What exactly is egregious misconduct? And because of that, they're now marketing to their customers through emails and even to their drivers internally that this bill might not be safe for you, might create a dangerous environment because these drivers are still on our platforms.
Interesting.
So council member Shekhar Christian is the lead sponsor of the bill, and both him and activists say that Lyft might be misinforming the public. They believe that the move from Lyft is maybe indicative of a pattern of them basically being opposed to public legislation in city council historically that creates any sort of regulation on their platforms. They're saying this is just another example of that. Ultimately, they believe that Lyft doesn't want to pay their drivers, whether that's paying for a minimum wage law that was passed in 2018 or to pay for an arbitration process to settle these disagreements. They ultimately say that this is the goal and it's not what Lyft is saying it is.
Yeah. Okay, Sunday is the New York Transit Museum's annual bus festival. You heard that right, bus festival in Brooklyn Bridge Park. I walked by your guys' desk the other day and heard you talking about this, and I'm like, oh no, is this going to be on the way this week?
Oh yeah.
You referred to it as the Woodstock of buses, but Stephen, you wrote about one of them this week. It's a rare double-decker from the 1930s. What makes it so special?
Well, first of all, let me just say, foamers out there, buckle up. This is going to get deep. Maybe put on some sepia glasses if you have them.
Right on, groovy man.
So the double-decker bus that I wrote about, it's called Betsy. We should call it by its proper name. It's a forest green double-decker bus with a creamy mustard yellow upper deck.
Okay.
It was made in 1930.
Cool.
It ran on the streets of New York until 1947. Do we have some Ken Burns music? This was the era of double-deckers in major cities, especially here in New York. And one of the key selling points is that you could fit lots of people on them. Obviously 2 layers, twice as many almost. They had these padded upholstered seats, wood paneling, nice craftsmanship. But one of the problems was you had to have 2 people to work on these things, a driver and someone to collect the fares, which did make it more costly to operate. But what Transit Museum curator Daniel Shapiro says is what ultimately doomed the double-decker in New York City is traffic lights.
So when traffic signals started getting hung over roadways in some areas of Manhattan especially, the buses would interfere with their operation, let's say, and then trees that would grow over the road, the bus would hit some of the lower branches and things like that.
Yeah, not good. By 1953, there were no more double-decker buses in New York City. But back to Betsy, this bus that will be at the transit bus fair. It was actually later named Betsy, not in New York, but in Alaska. You'll appreciate this,
I love
Sean.
Alaska, yeah.
The Skagway Transportation Service Have Bus Will Travel, that's the name of the company, purchased Betsy and actually drove it over there. It eventually ended up in Toronto.
Wow.
And in 2004 became part of the Transit Museum's fleet. And I will say from the research I've done, it is actually a rare bus. I spoke with some folks in Hershey, Pennsylvania, who are experts in buses. Here's Dave Milhauser, a former bus salesperson and volunteer at the museum, explaining it.
I would say very rare, extremely rare. I have never seen one. There may be a few in Europe, and the reason for that is European manufacturers have a history of being very good at preserving their history. But I do not know of a single one in this country.
Wow.
So go check it out. You can see it Sunday in Brooklyn Bridge Park, 10 a.m. to 3:30.
All right, we'll leave it there for today. Thanks to WNYC's Stephen Nesson, Ramsey Khalife, and special guest Liam Quigley. You can stay in the know on all things transit or ask it. We're going out on this music. This is what we're doing right now. You can ask a question
Peace
of
and
your own.
love. Peace and love.
You can sign up for our weekly newsletter at gothamist.com/ontheway. Everybody chill out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.